Okay, if the last few days have been a struggle for you to solve these equations, believe it or not, there's a formula that you can use to figure all this stuff out. There's a formula that allows you to solve for x. You don't need to do the factoring or the solving by completing the square. So check it out. This is what's called the quadratic formula. And it's important to recognize that the quadratic equation has to be written in this form. We have to get it equal to 0. Then the a is the coefficient of the squared term, the b is the coefficient of the x value, and the c is the constant number. It's got to be in that form. And I want you to notice something else. See this plus or minus sign right there? What that's going to tell you is that there's actually two answers. One of the answers, and if you want to separate them a little bit, it's the fraction negative b over 2a plus everything else. The other answer is negative b over 2a minus everything else. There's our plus or a minus. So let's talk about how we're going to do this. Let's solve this first one by using the quadratic formula. And again, what's pretty cool is the quadratic formula can be sung to Pop Goes the Weasel. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I got to be honest with you, I stole that from Mr. Baker across the hall, so props to him. So when we do this, here's a great strategy. I like to put what my a, b, and c values are. My equation's set equal to 0, so I'm in a good spot. Now I plug in my numbers. So I'm going to get x equals negative, and here's how I like to do it. I like to put a bunch of parentheses in and then fill in my parentheses. So my a value is 2. That goes on the bottom there, and it goes there. My b value is negative 7. That goes there and there. C is 6. That goes there. Now we just need to do some multiplication. So when we multiply and we combine some terms, the negative 7 becomes a 7. Underneath the radical, I square negative 7 and I get 49. 4 times 2 is 8, times 6 is 48. So I get 49 minus 48, all divided by 4. So if I simplify into the radical a little bit more, I'm going to get 7 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4. And we know what the square root of 1 is. The square root of 1 is equal to 1. So we're going to get x equals 7 plus or minus 1 over 4. Let's separate our fractions now. 7 plus 1 is 8. So one of our answers is 8 over 4, or 2. The other answer is 7 minus 1, which is 6 over 4. And if you want to reduce that to 3 over 2, we can. So those are our two answers. If we solved it by factoring, we would get that answer. So just plug the quadratic formula in and evaluate it. Let's go through another one. So I want to use a quadratic formula, but I recognize right away it's not equal to 0. So I'm going to move that 4 over. And I'm going to get 3x squared plus 5x minus 4 equals 0. A is 3, b is 5, c is negative 4. Let's plug them into our quadratic formula. So b is 5, a is 3, c is negative 4. All the hard work is done. Can you do some arithmetic now? Let's see what we get. We're going to get negative 5 plus or minus the square root of. If you want to type in that part into the calculator, the 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 4, you want to type that into the calculator? We're going to get 25 plus 48. 25 plus 48 is 73. Two times 3 is 6. Now, the square root of 73 can't really be simplified. If I wanted to try to simplify it, it's not going to work. If I wanted to go to a decimal, I could get a decimal for it with my calculator. But my answer is pretty good here. If you want to even write it as like negative 5 over 6 plus or minus the square root of 73 over 6, either answer is good. But I just want to show you there's a couple different forms for it. Now, maybe you're curious and you said, well, where does this thing come from? Well, it comes from completing the square. So check out this derivation. So what that means is I'm going to show you why the formula is what it is. And it's a little bit of heavy-duty algebra here. So let me think about this for a minute. It's set equal to 0. But remember, when I complete the square, I want my a value to be 1. So that's going to give me now x squared plus b over a times x plus c over a equals 0. And do you remember when we completed the square, we moved this to the other side? So now we get is x squared plus b over a times x equals negative c over a. Remember, I got a blank space, baby. And I'll write your name. So we got to complete the square with that blank space here. The way we do that is we take our value in front of the b in front of b, divide it by 2, and square it. So when we do that, we end up getting, let's do this step by step here. First of all, let's make this a better fraction. If I multiply top and bottom by 1/2 to get rid of the fraction, what I'm really squaring is b over 2a. And that's going to give me b squared over 4a squared. So that's what goes in here. And it goes in here too. Wow. So let's play on the left side a little bit. I know that the left side can be written like that. And what you might remember is that it's the square root of that number in the blank. So I'm going to x plus, and the square root of that is b over 2a. And now if I just kind of switch my terms around a little bit here, I get b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. Now on the next page, I'm going to play with that b squared over 4ac minus c over a. I'm going to take that b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. I got to get a common denominator. So let's multiply both by 4a. Chloe, go to guidance. And I get that over there. So now check out what I get over here. When I multiply the fractions, I get b squared minus 4ac. How about that? Over 4a squared. Looking pretty good. Now this is an equation that you can probably solve. What I want to do here is I want to take the square root of both sides. So we'll take a red square root. I know what you're saying. Ooh, the right side's really looking ugly. It sure is. So you know what? We're going to leave a lot of it alone. I'm going to leave the square root of the b squared minus 4ac on top. But wait, on the bottom, the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of a squared is a. Put my plus or minus in because I took a square root. And then let's just move that b over 2a to the other side. And look what we get. X equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And that's over 2a too. And if you want to combine them together, you get your quadratic formula. I would not ask you to derive it, but I think it's worthwhile to see where these things come from. We just don't make these up magically. That's actually where the quadratic formula comes from. So use that quadratic formula whenever you want. You just got to plug in the a, b, and c, and you are done.